Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to dig into something really important. How do companies get past all the buzzwords and actually build a workplace where every single person feels truly, genuinely safe?
But before we get into the nuts and bolts, I want you to just take a second and think about this. What does a truly safe workplace actually feel like? I mean, it's way more than just knowing the building is secure, right? It's a feeling.
A genuinely safe space, well, it's built on these things. It's having that psychological security, feeling like you can speak up without being afraid. It's where your identity isn't just put up with, but it's actually respected. It's knowing your work is valued, that you're free from bias, and maybe most important of all, you just feel like you belong.
So to build that kind of place, we first have to understand what's standing in the way. And this is key. We have to look beyond just individual actions and start to see the bigger, systemic structures that are at play.
And that brings us to this major concept: systemic racism. Now, this isn't about calling one person racist. Not at all. It's about the policies, the everyday practices, the unwritten rules inside an organization that often, without anyone even meaning to, end up putting racialized groups at a disadvantage and just keep inequality going.
This slide does a fantastic job of showing the difference. See, on one side, you've got individual prejudice, things that are pretty obvious, like a hurtful comment. But on the other side, you have systemic racism, and that looks like a hiring algorithm that keeps filtering out certain names, or a company holiday schedule that only acknowledges one culture, or when you look at the leadership team and there's just no diversity. See the difference? One is personal, the other is built right into the structure.
Okay, so if systemic racism is the barrier, then what are we aiming for? What's the goal? Well, the goal is to create what's called cultural safety. And really, this should be the North Star for any real diversity, equity, and inclusion effort.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? It's about building a place where someone's cultural identity isn't something they feel like they have to hide or minimize. No, it's the exact opposite. It's a place where that identity is seen, it's valued, and it's protected, so they can feel totally and completely secure.
And let's be real, you don't get there overnight. As you can see here, it's a journey. It all starts with awareness, just, knowing about different cultures. Then you move into sensitivity, which is about truly understanding and respecting those differences. But the final step, the real goal, is cultural safety. That's when you're actively building an environment that protects and celebrates cultural identity.
So understanding all this is one thing, but actually doing something about it? That's the real challenge. So how can organizations actually build a culturally safe workplace? Well, here's a pretty solid blueprint to get started. It really boils down to three main pillars of corporate responsibility. First, you've got to implement clear anti-racism policies. Second, you have to provide real, effective cultural safety training. And third, you need to set up strong support systems for everyone.
Let's talk about Pillar 1. This is all about baking fairness right into the company's DNA. That means you're constantly looking at your hiring and promotion processes for bias, you have an unmistakable zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, and you create ways for people to report issues that they actually trust and feel safe using.
The second pillar, training, is so important. But listen, we're not talking about some boring webinar that just checks a box. Good cultural safety training is about building actual skills. It teaches people how to be active allies, how to spot bias in the wild, and how to step in and do something about it safely.
And finally, Pillar 3 is about creating a safety net. This looks like mentorship programs that connect underrepresented employees with leaders, having well-supported employee resource groups, and making sure people have access to mental health resources that really get their diverse experiences.
So, we've talked about the what and the how, but let's get to the most important part, the why. What's the bigger purpose behind all this, and why is it so critical right now?
See, this isn't just about trying to be a good company. This work is a direct and frankly necessary response to some very urgent calls for reconciliation. And in Canada, that has a very specific and powerful meaning, tying corporate responsibility directly to the history and the future of Indigenous peoples.
And that brings us to this number, 92. What do you think that means?
This is call to action number 92 from Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It specifically calls on the corporate world to get on board with the principles of reconciliation. That means committing to real consultation, making sure there's fair access to jobs and training, and educating staff on the history of Indigenous peoples. Building a culturally safe workplace is a direct answer to that call.
And this brings us to the final question we should all be asking ourselves and our companies. Is our workplace a place that simply tolerates diversity, or is it a place that is actively, truly inclusive, where every single person feels safe, respected, and like they belong? Because the difference between those two, well, it's everything.